I had 5 brothers and 6 sisters, and one of my brothers, Joe, was drafted, but when he was on rifle range or someplace, he busted an eardrum, and therefore he was discharged within 2 months. So he was only in about 2 months. My oldest brother was Francis, and he was 4F. He didn't go at all. So I was the first one to be drafted out of the family. My dad was in World War I, and he was a sergeant. He was only 5 foot 1 inch tall, so he really had a little uniform. But he made sergeant, and he was overseas, but he never talked much about the war. So June 26th of 1944, I went to Kaukauna and was sworn into the Army and went to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. From Fort Sheridan, Illinois, I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and when we got there, I was the last one out of the truck that was going around, and they said, you get off here. When I got off, here I was in what they called a radio section. I didn't even know what the back of a radio looked like. But they said, you must have something because you're in the radio section. We had a vegetable farm before I went into service, and I also peddled newspapers for quite a few years. And the last 2 years, in my junior and senior year, I worked for National Tea Food Stores after work. My uncle was the manager of that store in Appleton. So when I got into the Army, I couldn't believe all the spare time I had. I just couldn't believe it. Because where I went in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, we only went from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon to school, and then we were done. We had every weekend off. I didn't know what to do with my time because I never had that much time to myself in all my life. But I made through it, and then from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, there I learned Morse code and also to be a forward observer radio operator. I could take Morse code. I got up to 18 words per minute with a pencil. And then I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And there in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, they had more radio courses. And then also I went to radio repair school. And I graduated from there. Now, one thing I still remember about Fort Sill, Oklahoma is when we were at school, we were sitting there and a sergeant in the back of the room more or less wasn't paying attention to the instructor. So finally the instructor said, if you think you know everything, why don't you come up here and teach this class? Well, this is the Army. And guess what? He said, well, if you look in the front of the book, you'll see I wrote that book. What happened was he got wounded over in the Pacific, and they brought him back to the United States, and they sent him to radio school to learn how to fix radios. From Fort Sill, Oklahoma, then I came home for what they call a delay and route pass. And then I went to Fort Meade, Maryland. When I got to Fort Meade, Maryland, they prepared me to go overseas. And we went up to Boston, where I got all my shots at a replacement center. And then we got on a ship May 2nd of 1944 to go overseas.